Hey everybody, it's Armin. So today I'm building another motor for a customer. We're just going to be throwing in cams and converting this thing over to be a 2.5 liter just for installing a regular old NC Miata, just like we normally do. This time I'm going to do a stationary video. So the camera's mounted over here and I'm going to do everything here. We will do a lot of time lapsing on this since some of the stuff doesn't really need to be stated, but I will walk through the parts that I think are important. This is just like my other video. All the information is going to be the same, but from a stationary perspective. So you won't be able to see 100% of everything I do, but I'll try my best to make sure the camera stays in a good position. So let's get to it. First, we're going to start by just taking off all the things we don't need. I still have this thing straight off of the customer's truck bed, attached to my hoist. So we're not going to put it on the engine stand until I have taken most of the stuff off. Just figure a lot of that stuff's easier to take care of right now. There's no point in really mounting it up yet. Okay, so we're going to start by just taking off all of the external stuff, throwing away a bunch of pieces. I got my trash can and my scrap bin over here. Let's get to it. I also have a bin over here that I'm just going to be throwing in all of the extra fasteners that I'm going to keep. Not all of them do I keep for necessarily this build. I may just keep them for my shelf stock because I have an exorbitant amount of just extra hardware sitting around. Lipstick is dry like it should be, but there's always some fluid in these things. Let's see. That didn't go well. I'll get that in a moment. We'll pass these injectors off to the shop down the way to get cleaned, tested and cleaned. Because I have had some of these cars that sit at the junkyard for a while come in and then, or the motors that sit at the junkyard for a while, they'll come in and the injectors will just be stuck because chances are if you've got one of these motors, it's been sitting for over a year and in many cases over 2 years. And in that time period, your ethanol will gum up and you'll have a stuck injector. Actually, my first 2.5 swap I ever did. No, actually, it was just a 2.0 replacement. I replaced a 2.0 in one of my personal cars, and yeah, it had stuck injectors. Honestly, I used to keep these pigtails and use them, but then we just got the Ford part number, and then we just get brand new pigtails for changing over the VVT. So it's fine. Get all these clips off of here. There we go. Loosen this valve cover up. Now, before that valve cover can come off, we do have to get that sensor out of the center. Ford likes to do head temperature sensors, so that you just need to get that plug out of the center. It looks like it's, you know, the third pigtail or the third coil pack, but it's not. It's just a head temperature sensor. My big extension. Lost my socket. Oh boy. I'll grab another 10. We'll get it when we get the intake manifold off. No big deal. What bolt am I missing? Trying to pull this stupid intake manifold off. I must have them all out. Yeah, it's just really stuck. Okay, now I'm gonna yank this off of here. I'm gonna pinch off the, oh, didn't even need to, the PCV. Not really much to see here. The intake manifold is now off. It's the only thing we need the super long extension for. I'll get this block breather off of here. assembly is trapped. I don't think I have any more hoses I gotta pull off, so we'll put these back. Bracket for AC. And I'll need an E-star. I'll get that off. What size E-star? E7. Just an extra stud to have around. Now I'm not going to remove the thermostat until we have this thing up on the stand, because it will puke coolant. Should be 22 millimeter. 22 millimeter on the EGR. There we go. Oh, the other E-stars, the front cover. Let's see, those should be E8? E10, E10s. Yeah, those will come out. I don't hold on to these. I've got no use for them. Not really a useful bolt size. Organized. There we go. Okay. So we got our 14, 13. Let's see. I'm not going to take any front bolts off just yet. Let's see what else can I take off here. Let me go ahead and get this crank sensor off of here. We are not using the crank sensor that comes with the motor. That's the wrong one. We have to use the one that comes off of our Miatas. Okay. I think we're at the point where we're ready to put it on the hoist, or lift it up on the hoist and put it on the stand. So I'm going to turn this thing backwards real quick. I'm going to pry that rear main off. Should make life a little easier for after we get it on the stand. You don't have to deal with pulling the rear main off. Also, don't pull your rear main if you have a full pan of oil, because this is a this rear main does sit in the oil. Okay. Oh, here we go. You know what? Before we do that, I'm gonna go ahead and just take this valve cover off. Again, very stuck. This happens. Hell yeah. get out my baby snap-on hammer. Our trick is getting it off of the VVT unit. There we go. Stop cover is no longer useful. Pitch. Take our gaskets off. Oh, I need a hammer. So that little sensor I was talking about, we're just going to whack it. Some people ask here and there if they need to plug this hole. Use your eyeballs, look down the hole. You'll see it doesn't lead anywhere. It's pulling temperature. It's not actually, it's not like into a fluid passage or something. We're gonna get our 19 millimeter. Zap that out of there. Cool. Let's take a look at these spark plugs while we're at it. Okay, straight out of the junkyard, they are AYFS32YR Fomico. Just want to bring this over to the screen. They're kind of burnt up because they've been used for quite a long time. This is definitely an aged plug. Pro tip, don't use an impact on your spark plugs. If you plan to reuse them, it can shatter the porcelain. All these spark plugs look the same. There's no weird stuff going on here. I don't see any red flags of any of the condition of any of the components. Just looks like another motor that sat at the junkyard for a while. Cool. Now I'm going to chain it. I'm not deal with that. Okay, let's get this thing mounted up. Got my set of bolts here. These should be M10 by 1.5, I believe. You know what? I'm going to verify that. Verified. These are M10 by 1.5s. And then there's one on here that actually it doesn't matter because, well, that's a through bolt. I'm just going to put that through. I believe these bolts are actually spare front cover bolts from other NCs I've torn down. Make sure not to mount this to your oil pan, otherwise you'll have some trouble. Because we're taking the oil pan off, of course. All right, let's get our 13 and sap these down. And of course, one of them's a 14. Two of them are 14s. Just by chance. Got some parts over here that need to be cleaned up from another motor that we're working on. They'll be taken care of later. Meanwhile, let's go ahead and get this guy mounted up. Alright, so the way I usually do this is I bring this over here, line them up. This amount of effort. No one's got to hurt their back today. Let's see if that works. Sweet. All right, it's pinned. We're done with the engine hoist. So we can take these bolts out, unchain it. I'm going to change camera angle now that we're off the floor. So it looks like the camera angle is actually still okay. We'll do a little bit of work in this position and then we'll change camera angle when I have to do top side work, so to speak. I want you guys to notice this says that there should be no oil and there's no filter. I don't know if you noticed, but well, it definitely has a filter on it. And per my experience, we always have oil in these things. Now, I'm going to go ahead and take off as many bolts as I can off of the front. Still got my little bolts in here. They're 13s. I like to keep these 1-ton pulleys off of the 2.5 and reuse them because check this out. It's got 3 big holes on it. These are lighter weight. We'll take every little bit that we can, especially when it's free. I'll set that on my table over here. We're just going to run around and get all these 8s out. There's one more that's right behind the crank pulley. We'll take care of that when we get the crank pulley off. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to take, let's see, there's a 10 on the front cover. I'll take that 10 out. There we go. There's also a 10 on the side here. I'm going to take out. It's your little timing plug. It's a little guy. So this will be very important when we come over to the timing side of things, that you have to remove it. It's right here. That guy right there. So I just took that out. We're going to need that. Don't lose it. Oh, it looks like my VVT gasket stayed with the VVT unit. That's curious. Let's get that off there. So I got a new gasket that he's going to get. Okay. Cool. All right. Now we have all that. I'm going to crank this thing over to TDC, and then we're going to go an additional 720 degrees before we blast off that crank pulley. Let's grab a little wrench here. How do we find out where TDC is? Well, there's 2 TDCs. All we're caring about, since we're going to be removing the cams, that doesn't matter. We're just going to worry about being at one of the TDCs. So I'm going to grab this guy. Stick it down spark plug hole 1. Looks like we're at a TDC there. Oop, rotating. So that's going down. She's going back up. Well, while it's on the up, there's a hole in the front of the crank pulley right there. TDC is where that hole lines up with the bolt hole behind it right there. So we're about 90 away from that. We're going to stop. This hole at the bottom, TDC, right? Now, like I said, it doesn't matter which TDC we are at because we're going to remove the cams here. If you are worried about which TDC, then get out your cam tool and you need to try to insert it when it is able to be inserted, or when you can see that on the back side, when you can see that these cam lobes, the cam tails or whatever you want to call them, when you can see that both of these slots here are parallel, flat, sort of lined up with the deck surface here, the upper deck surface, I guess. When those are parallel here, you're actually at a compression TDC, and that's timing TDC, as I guess you would call it. Right now, it actually looks like we are not. Looks like we're on exhaust TDC, on the exhaust stroke. But again, like I said, doesn't matter. So we're going to blast off that crank bolt now. We're in a safe position. We're doing this to ensure that we have no interference when we are doing our cam installation. All right, here we go. So crank moved just a little bit. Still doesn't matter because we're still not at TDC nor TDC. Every time I remove one of these one-time use diamond washers, I fold them, make sure they're broken so they can't be reused, not even accidentally. And we're going to take out our last 8mm that holds on the front cover. There's nothing else holding on the front cover now. FYI, that last bolt I did pull, that is a longer one, so it's slightly longer than the others. It has an actual shoulder on it. Pay attention for that one. I'm going to pry off the front cover now. Take our big pry tool. You can just stick it down right in front of the VVT gear and just pry away. Ta-da! We'll clean this up. I actually have cleaned up ones ready to go, so I don't have to wait around. So let's take a look at our timing components here. There we go. So let's take a look at our timing components. So over here we have our oil pump. The oil pump is chain driven to the crank, and then the crank chain drives the intake and the exhaust cams up here. So I want to point out, I just removed off the crank bolt and the crank pulley and then the front cover. That holds the crank to the crank gear. The crank gear right now is actually free. We could actually remove it if we wanted to, aside from the chain tension being on there. The crank can be rotated now freely though, which is a big deal. You need to pay attention to this because this isn't your typical motor where it's still in time, it's not in time anymore. So the cams right now are still locked down, they are still locked to their positions on the gears. But the moment you loosen those bolts, timing is lost. So either way, we're tearing all this down. Doesn't matter, we're going to replace all that. So I will not remove this bolt onto the oil pump. There's no need to. We can roll that off, but we are going to remove just all of these timing components now. And I have a separate bin for all these oily components. We're going to need my 10 and my 8, and that's it for just the moment. Let's start here. Doesn't matter where we start, taking a bunch of bolts out. Just squirt a little bit of oil there. That's our tensioner. And we're going to slide this off of here. The chain's now free. Unchain this. And the way to do this is we're going to roll this off. Just make sure it's fully engaged over here. And this has enough slack that it should be able to just roll right off. And there we are. On the back side of this, there will be another another diamond washer. We're going to fold that guy, make sure no one uses it. On reassembly, it is paramount that all this stuff is absolutely dry, no oil, because oil is anti-friction and the diamond washer's entire function is friction. Next, we're going to take off these bolts that hold on the cams. I'm wiping this oil off my hands. One of these. So this isn't important to see up top. I'm just going to grab the can and blast these loose. Those are 21s also. So I already have a 21. Here we go. I'm going to throw these bolts away. They are one-time use because they are torque to yield. We're going to keep our cam gear. Some of these gears you're going to take off and they're going to have a washer behind them. These don't, but we will be putting one back in because we want these to be as secure as possible because the car is going to be raced. Take that guy out. We're done with our big nasty impact. I'm going to take our VVT off. So once again, there's no washer inside of here, so we don't have anything to remove. That's the front cover, and that's the timing component. So right now, nothing is in time at all. What we're going to do now is we're going to remove the oil pan. So I've got all my timing components here. Oh, I did not throw away that bolt. Bolt's thrown away. We're going to get our oil pan off. I probably should drain it first, huh? Well, we can drain it after we remove all the bolts. I'm ready to remove bolts. They're all just 10s, so we're just going to pull all these 10s out. Sweet. So now we're going to drain the oil. In order not to make a bigger mess in my drain pan here, I'm going to go and get one of my other drain buckets and we're just going to drain it into that. Make life a little less messy. What are you, 15? 15 it is. Okay, that could be a first. Let's pull the pin and rotate it a little more. There we are. There's some oil in there. Well, it's not a lot of oil. Usually there'll be like 2-3 quarts in these things, so cool, great, not a lot of oil. We are just going to be throwing out this guy, so I'm going to zap the drain plug back in mercilessly. We're going to rotate the motor around and remove that oil filter. I had to second guess myself, like, am I going the right direction? Shit, I better be. Changed enough oil. So this is actually really clean oil, I'm surprised. Normally when I do these, the oil will just come out just black. So I guess this car must have had an oil change right before it got totaled, or whatever happened. Alright, I'm going to take off that little sensor, it's a 24. This is an actual sensor. The one that comes on your Miata is a switch. So if you unplug it, the fake oil pressure gauge on the dash still works, which just tells you right there, it's fake. Okay, I got this thing sitting right there. This will be fine. So we're gonna pull that oil pan off. Pry tool out. Alright, so I'm just going to pry right against here. Ta-da! Alright, there's a lot more oil in this. That's okay. I'm going to sit it over to the side here to let it drain off into our little drain bin here. I'm going to take off those 2 8s that hold on the pickup tube. We'll reuse the bolts. We won't be using the pickup tube. I'll go fish those out. Okay, this is trash. If you're paranoid about your engine, you can break this apart and see if there's any particulate in it. But I already see what came out of draining this. It's fine. It's very clean. We're going to remove the 4 14s that hold on our balance shaft assembly. I almost said balance shaft delete. Like, dude, no, I have to delete it still. Okay, so we're going to 14s. 4 14s hold this on. Careful removing these. These things will splatter oil. Let's go bigger. No, let's go biggest. Oh, puking on me here. Like I said, oil. Okay, remove the other one. Got 2 of these bolts out. I'm going to go ahead and pitch these. I'm not going to reuse those. I don't know where I put the 3rd one. I'm going to have to go watch the video and then go, oh, that's where I put it. So I'm going to have to hold this thing in because the last one, of course, is going to allow it to fall. Alright, and then when we drop this down, a little bit of oil is probably going to come out. No oil? Beautiful. So I'm going to turn this thing over in my drain bin here. It's going to probably drain a little bit of oil. So that thing weighs probably a good 15-20 pounds. Just lost that weight off of our engine. We will be blocking off the passage where it comes from, so that way we won't just be dumping oil pressure because you would not have oil pressure if you left that open. Okay, yeah, seriously, where did that bolt go? Oh, I think I see it over there. I'm not digging that up. Okay, so still need to remove our cams. I'm going to go ahead and take a break just for a moment. And when I come back, I'll change the camera angle so we can better see what I'm going to be doing with the cams. Alright, so this camera angle should suit us better. What I've done is I've just went ahead and moved a couple of things around, cleaned up, brought out some other tools, and I'm going to go over a couple of things. So over here I have all of my new parts. We'll be using a brand new OE Ford/Mazda crank bolt, 2 crank washers, 2 cam bolts, 2 cam washers, front main seal. I have this is a used pulley, however it is an OEM pulley. It says LF9460920 Alpha, so it is an authentic pulley. When we get the customer's car in, we will take theirs as a core. This is a good condition one off of the previous customer's car we built. Just like the oil pan, I have cleaned up oil pans that I'm going to be assembling this motor with, and then we'll just be able to take the one off of the customer car, clean it up for the next use. Just simple core stuff. So this is a good condition pulley. Then we have our BC cams. There are Mazda Speed springs over here in the bin. We have a new pickup tube with gasket, a rear main seal, the block breather, and then a Mountoon balance shaft delete. Other than that, everything over here is just standard parts. Oh, I do have a core fuel rail, so the one that comes off of here we can't use. So after I get those injectors cleaned up, I'll have those on here, have this installed on the motor. Customer comes in, a lot less work to do. So over here on my little table, I put a couple of tools. I filled up my brake clean. We have our crank pulley holder. We have our timing tools. We have our feeler gauges. We have our fancy snap-on digital torque wrench, some Loctite, a magnet, a pick, the not so fancy tiny torque wrench that I have. And then this is a new tool I'm going to try out today. I haven't tried this before. I have heard of people using this. This is actually I believe it's for the EJ motors, so Subaru motors. This is the valve spring compressor tool. You bolt it down where your cam caps go, and then you just drive this little piece down, and it allows you to not have to hold down like we do with our lever action type tool, which I've used in previous videos and I've done for all my other installations. So we'll see how that works. Other than that, I also have my leak down tester. So we're not going to be using it as a leak down tester. This will strictly be used for the installation of the valve springs. If you're not installing valve springs, you can skip over some of the next portion of the video. I will mark that on the video when you can skip. But the BTDC portion, actually, for people doing valve springs, that didn't matter at all. So when we put in the leak down tester, it's going to force this thing into BDC in the cylinder that we're putting the leak down tester, so it won't matter at all. We'll go over that when we get past the valve spring installation. Meanwhile, what we're going to be doing is I only have one valve spring organizer, and the valve spring organizer is currently occupied with another motor that is on pause for a moment. So instead of taking everything apart off of that organizer, I'm just going to nicely organize everything over here on this tablet. So we're going to start by disassembling the cam assembly. Oh, you know what? Let me go ahead and take off that thermostat so it can just start making a mess. Let's see. Oh boy, that's going to be a mess. We may have to just pause this again for me to do a cleanup. What a mess. Well, I'm also going to make a mess by rolling this thing over. I'll tell you what, we're going to take a change of plans here. We're just going to roll the motor over since it's going to dump more fluid before I even bother doing a cleanup, let's do our balance shaft delete. So I'm going to step over here. We're going to roll this motor over. It's going to start dumping oil. There. Oh, and some cooling out of the back of the head. That's new. You done? It's not done. Move this back just a little bit so it can catch. Yes, please catch. Okay. So the balance shaft delete is a pretty easy install. What we're going to do is we're going to take out our balance shaft delete kit. Let's open that up. Consists of one Allen head bolt and one little plate that has an O-ring on it. Doesn't matter what brand you get. We just get with the Mountain one since we're a dealer for those. I'm going to grab our appropriate size socket. In our case, it's an 8. So what I like to do for these is, due to the positioning, let me not slip and bust ass on camera. We're going to take a little bit of oil. I think we got a little bit of oil here. Let's just put some oil on that O-ring. So there are 4 bolts here. If I can get this on camera. Okay, we've got 4 bolts here. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's what we removed for the balance shaft assembly. And then we have one extra hole off here. It's outside of the rectangle of the bolt holes. So we're going to be installing this into that spot. We're just going to reach in there. First, I'm going to place this into the hole. I'm going to wiggle it back and forth a bit, get that thing to press down. Appears we got it into place. Now I'm going to take my 1/2" extension and make sure. Yep, that's down. So I have bought some of the, it's like eBay balance shaft deletes before, and I found that some of those, they don't center the holes out. So it's important that you do this just to make sure that the hole lines up before you go trying to cross thread the crap out of your block. That's not a good look. This hole does line up, so we're going to take a little bit of red Loctite. Let me relocate my bolt. I'm just going to put a little dab of red Loctite on here. Cool. I'm going to take and drop this guy in here. Cool. No, I'm not going to torque that, but I did zap it down. Alright, balance shaft deleted. Oh hey look, the O-ring stuck around from our pickup tube. I'm going to throw that down there. While we're down here, I'm going to go ahead and throw on our new pickup tube. Because, well, we're down here, so why not? Man, I have made a sufficient mess here, haven't I? So we're going to grab our pickup tube. Let's get that guy out of here. Put the O-ring in the spot. Long bolts that we pulled off of the pan, off of the previous pickup tube, make sure it points towards the rear. Okay. Those are 8s. I'm going to take this opportunity to just go ahead and throw an oil filter on there. That way as I rotate this motor over and over again, it won't just dump oil everywhere. Cool. With all that being done, I'm going to go ahead and sit it back up straight. I'm going to install a thermostat just so that doesn't puke anymore as well. Got them 3 bolts I just took out. Would be those 3 guys. Yeah, it's those 3. Suffocates thermostat here. Cool. I'm also going to throw in my block breather. If I can. And take care of all the little stuff. Get it out of the way. I got all the block breather bolts. That's better. Okay, since I've gotten just those minor things taken care of, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and, well, I guess let's go ahead and take these cams off. Now, an important detail about doing these cams, these bolts, they're shallow headed, so you need to make sure that you're pressing down to make sure these don't hop. The front ones are the least important ones, so we're going to only put that back on after we're done with the cams and the valve springs. I'm just going to sit this down over here. Now, in the past I've said you have to uninstall them in a certain order. We're just going to pick which one has the lobes down, that one, and we're do that one last. Here we go. Make sure you stay in order as they come off. They are labeled. They say I2, I3, I4 if you can read that, and I5. And they need to be in the legible position from where I'm standing. So over here we have E2, E3, E4, E5. Those, same thing. This is the lobe that is compressed, so I'm going to just go from back to front. These cams, we'll give them away as a core to one of the cam manufacturers. I mean, if they want, they can have them. We don't need these. Okay, we're going to get these cams out of here now. It should be a 24. Yep, we'll just, come on. Look at this one. There we go. Cams. Sit these out here. I have no use for those. So for now, it doesn't matter what buckets are in here. If you're changing your cams out, throw your cams in at this point. So this is the point at which you can jump forward if you are just installing cams. This is the point at which you need to skip forward. All right, for those of you who are doing valve springs, we're going to be removing all of these buckets. It doesn't matter what order they are because we have to redo them anyway. But I'm going to keep them in order just all the same. Okay, so at this point what I'm going to do is, so I don't bust ass here, I'm going to take a pause and I'm going to clean up and then I will resume with doing the valve springs. So progressing right along here, I've taken care of the first and fourth cylinders and now we're going to hop over to the second cylinder. The reason I'm doing this is just to avoid spinning the motor over a bunch of times needlessly. Doesn't really matter what order you do them in, I guess. But, you know, this motor sat for a while. There's probably very little oil in those main bearings. I'm not trying to spin it any more than I need to. So we're going to start in spinning the motor over here. So, there we go. Worked out a little bit of a technique with this. Let me see if I can't demonstrate it reasonably. Got both of my impacts here. I got a 10mm on this and I got my little Allen key on that one. So first we're going to sit it down here. We're going to start those threads down. Zip this down real quick. Okay. Get my nice little tool in here. That seems far enough. Grab our magnet. Come here. A little more. Okay, got both of those keepers out. I'm going to zip this out, push down to the side, that comes right out, and grab this, add it to the lineup of old springs. So what I'm going to do is just to seat these in here, I'm going to take one, I'm going to sit it down like that in the half moon, like that. It's important to do this sideways with a finger on the bottom, these can fall through. I got both of them. So I'm going to be installing this kind of like that. So with both of them in place, it's important that I put them with the cups, or the halves, so the here and here. That way, if there's any misalignment forward, backward, they still fall on. Because if you try to install them this way, sometimes it'll get caught up. And that's a technique that we use on any of these tools. I'm just going to sit my valve spring there. I'm going to drop this guy in there with a finger on top. Make sure my orientation is correct. Okay. Now we're going to sit this guy on top again. I'm going to leave my finger on top of this. That way those keepers don't move anywhere. We're going to go down until both of them grab. Okay, there we go. They've grabbed, so I'm going to bring it back up. And that's it. That one's done. Now we're going to unthread this, go to this side and do the same thing again. What some people will do is they'll use picks. I have a pick here just in case one of them decides to move. I haven't had that trouble yet, actually. It seems to go really smoothly with this little tool. I think this little tool was 30 bucks on Amazon. We're going to zip this down. Okay, got both of the keepers. Keepers acquired, keepers lined up. Put this down in there nicely. Put the tool on top. Done. So that is that's doing 2 valve springs. And if any of the keepers decide not to seat correctly and you're having trouble getting it to seat, what I did is I just took my a small hammer and this guy and just made sure I put a thumb over it to make sure they push down. Just tap on them a couple of times and it'll seat properly. Because once the keeper catches that groove on the valve stem, it'll just grab on and it won't pop out. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and cut to the end of installing all these. All right, we're all finished up here. I got to say, even though that was my first time using that tool, that was the fastest I've ever been able to do valve springs because you don't have to do all the setup and work around the whole trapeze assembly of the standard valve spring style. So all of these are the stock ones, you can tell because they just have the little white stripe at the bottom. You can tell these are all new because the top 3 coils are white. So that indicates they're the Mazda Speed ones. So if you ever needed a check, you will have to pull the bucket off, of course, but you can see that. All right, so we got all those in. All of my keepers are seated nicely. None of them need to be bonked in anymore. I already took care of all that. So now we're going to just stick all those buckets back in. So I'm going to write down a list of all of the buckets as they go in, and then what we'll do is we'll install the cams and we'll use those numbers of the buckets to figure out our calculation as to what we need to change them out for. So I'll start by writing all of those down. So the way I write these down is I go via, as I'm looking at it, so this will be intake over here, exhaust over here, and then we'll have V1, V2 of cylinder 1, and then it'll just be 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. And then I'll just write all those in. Okay, then we'll go back and we'll measure those. I'll write down the measurements of each of them, and we'll be able to calculate what we need to change our buckets out for. I have a selection of something over 1,000 buckets on hand, so we'll be able to get these dead on to exactly what spec is. Okay, we're looking at all my numbers I've got. All of these are pretty much 200 series, 262, 282, 222, 202, and then these over here are a mixed bag. We've got 302, 342, 242, 222, 402, 482, so these are all over the place. I actually expect to have to compensate a lot of these because that means there was a lot of variance from the factory on either the cam or the valve sizing. But I'm going to go ahead and drop these buckets in just as is. Like I said, I'm going to drop them in exactly where they were. And then we're going to drop in our new cams. Come on. Come on. Here we go. Some of these are pretty picky. Remember, you don't want to force these down if they don't want to go. And it must be my right hand because I'm catching all of these. Yeah, it must be. I'm going to have to pop that one back out. Why are you being a pain in the ass? I don't know. Can I get this? No, access is limited. Alright, as much as I hate to do it, I'm very gently tapping to try and get this to, there we go. Alright, all the buckets are in. Just want to wipe them down real quick just in case any crap got on them. So at this point, if you did install the valve springs, you are going to need to rotate the crank back over. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just, from the underside, get a pry bar, and I'm going to pry it over. You can pry over on the gear and just sort of work it, but the objective is to get the first cylinder. You want the rod to be over on this side. So right now I'm at TDC, it looks like. Yeah, I'm at TDC. So I'm going to crank it backwards, right on the weight, it looks like. Counterweight's right there. Cool. I just backed it off a little bit, not a lot. So you see we're definitely not at TDC. We're past TDC because this is up, this is kind of down. So that'll leave us enough space to be able to get these cams in. Okay. So let's unpackage our new cams. Like I said, we're installing BCs. We have BCO 402. They came with some grease. I'm not going to use it. I have my own right here. I have a tub of grease. And if you look in here, it says that we need to go for 8 thou on the intake and 10 thou on the exhaust side, which is pretty standard. That's what I pretty much do for all of them. You need to make sure that you do have the assembly lube. So if your cams didn't come with assembly lube, get some. You actually should be able to get it at your local hardware, automotive store. Doesn't matter what brand, just make sure you have some. Push that aside for now. Alright, there's one cam. Now, can you tell me if this is the intake or the exhaust cam? Here's how you tell. Tone ring is on the intake, as well as the fat end with the oil passages is always on intake, so that will go here. But not yet. Okay, and we have our exhaust cam. As contrast to the other one, it does not have a tone ring on the back, and it does not have oil passages on the front. Now let's get messy. I have my assembly lube here. This is red line assembly lube. Just gonna put a dab on each of these. Let's make sure we put it in those journals there. Uh-oh, got a little bit of mess there. I'll wipe that up in a moment. This should be enough for all of them right here. Cool. So that's the assembly lube. I'm gonna put my cans on. Some people like to douse these in assembly lube also. I have a different technique. I'm gonna sit this in here and then I'm gonna put more assembly lube on that. So we're gonna make sure that, I like to rotate these cams to where this is seated. So right now, this is fairly seated down. Because if this gets caught by any means on this front end, you're gonna snap your cam. Do not do that. Let's see, so yeah, you see in any of these other positions, it sits upright-ish. So I don't care what position it's in as long as it's kind of seated over here. Same with the exhaust cam, we're just gonna seat it in here. The back end is the one that has the key slot. Again, not worried about what position it necessarily goes in as long as this is mostly seated down. I'm gonna take that assembly lube again. We're gonna make a mess. So we're gonna go over these cam lobes, put some on the cam lobes here. Ooh, let's make a mess. So now when these cams roll over, they'll just put grease all over the place. It's great. That's what we want. Okay. Oh man, there's a fly out here. Fucking dick. Hate flies. All right, I need those 2 bolts back from this. So we're gonna start installing can caps. I'm just gonna sit them on top for the moment. No, it doesn't matter that there's a little bit of grease, it'll get pushed out. I'm going to start the threads a couple in on each of these. Frig off, fly. Okay. Now, the way I do this is start zipping these down nice and gently. This is the one that's compressing. This is when it's going to take the most effort. Okay. All right, now that all those are done, I'm going to torque them. Go away, dude. This is gonna look hilarious on camera, isn't it? Break it off. Okay, we're gonna double check all those, as you always should. I'm not going to install the front one yet because it doesn't do anything until final installation. I'm going to leave the torque wrench engaged since we're going to end up using that in just a moment. Now, I'm going to take just a pause. I'm going to go grab the big fly killing device because I'm going to lose my shit otherwise. I'm also going to go grab the dummy bolts I use in order to rotate these cams over so we can break them in. Be right back. All right, what we have here are just 2 bolts. They're used, but I just keep them around so I can do this. And I put a nut on there because otherwise they'll bottom out. Just gonna thread that on there. Once again, if you have not checked if you're at 90-ish before TDC, if you're not BDC right now, all your pistons are down-ish, this is where you're going to ruin your head. So make sure. Okay. We have our buckets in, we know what size our buckets are. I have my pen here and I have my paper. I'm going to be writing down all of these sizes. So now that all of these are torqued, we're ready to spin these over. I'm going to grab my 21, grab my ratchet. Okay, I want to spin this over at least 10 times. So you'll hear this will do 40 clunks, whatever you want to call them. That should be 10. We're going to do it again. Okay, it's been spun over. So what we're going to do now is take our measurements. All right, now there are various ways to take measurements. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure at the base of the cam. So the valves point that way, so I want my cam to point that way. This one's already about pointing there, so I'm going to point it away. Sorry, I may have misspoke. You want the cam lobe pointing directly away from the valve stem or from the bucket. So right now we are. Our objective for the exhaust is going to be in the range of, let's say, 10 to 12-ish. That's what I anticipate seeing. So we're going to start by making sure a 12 fits. If a 12 fits, then we know we need to change the bucket size. So 12 fits. 13 fits. 14 does not fit. So we're going to call that a 13. Mind you, all of these sizes I'm mentioning are in thousandths of an inch. So if you look at these say 0.012, 0.013. They also have their metric equivalents. So whatever you want to measure in, just make sure that you calculate appropriately. So we're going to test with the 14 on that one as well. 14's a no-go. 13. So we're going to go 13 again. I'm going to rotate this cam over. We're going to go ahead and just measure the next lobes. So what's tipping me off that we're going to need to add more already is that when I'm rotating these over, the base circle is dry. It's not even picking up lube because there's a larger gap. The entire concept here that we're trying to accomplish is that we want the cam to be able to open as much as possible, but we also don't want the valve to hang open. So if your tolerance is too tight, it won't be able to let the cam close the valve, so to speak. And then by the same token, if you leave too much space, you'll not only get noise, which can lead to damage on your cam lobes, but it also can not open the cam as much as you want it to, or open the valve. So the idea of the cam is it pushes the valve open. You know, your tolerance one way or the other dictates what your maximum open is. So again, if the minimum spec is 8 thou, then I'm going to try to hit 8 thou. Usually on the exhaust, if there's a range, let's say on these it's usually 10 to 12 on the exhaust and 8 to 10 thou on the intake. You want to hit 8 thou as best as possible on the intake, and you want to hit 12 thou on the exhaust. That'll get you a little better of performance. So I've heard from the Miata experts. So we're on this next one. Let's measure. Let's start with our 14. Ooh. Feels like 14 might be it. It's got a little bit of resistance to it. So I'm going to pull out my 15. Ooh, 15. So this one's probably going to be... All right, well, the camera cut off because of a temperature. You know, these GoPros love to get hot. So I went ahead and just finished all the measurements, and I have entered them into my table here. So let me explain my table. If you haven't seen this before, this is my calculator. You can email me and I can send you a copy of it. It has instructions up here. But basically all it is we have cylinder 1, 2, 3, and 4, exhaust, and intake. These are our initial measurements. So it says initial lash in inches. We put those here. We're not using lash caps, so these two white columns are invalid. We put our bucket IDs in here. So 202, 202, 202, et cetera, all of those. And then over here, we're able to see what our resultant is if we change a bucket. So it goes ahead and it does all the calculation, and you just put in here what you have or what you'd like to move around and see what you can get. So I went ahead and got all these exhaust ones to about in the 10s, so they're between 10 and 11 thou, and then all of the intake ones from 8 to 9 thou. So what I'll do now is I'll review what buckets I have on the car, or on the motor rather, and I'll see which ones I can reuse, relocate. It seems I need to change every single one of these because, like I had said initially, these are some really weird bucket sizes and they're very inconsistent. And then I'll just go to my inventory and pull out which ones I need in order to complete this. But that's all that this is, and I'll go back and I'll remeasure after I finish in order to verify that I made the correct calculations as well as measurements. The calculations I'm pretty confident in. This is the calculator I always use. As far as the measurement goes, you can sometimes get some variance in your measurements. Also, if you are doing all of your own measurements, you can't really compare with someone else's measurements. You want to make sure that you're always using your set of feeler gauges, because every set of feeler gauges could be slightly different. You might get different measurements, and also you might just get different measurements because of different techniques. So anyway, we're going by my techniques and my measurements, and what I'll do now is I'll go review my buckets that I have. I will go select all of the ones off of shelf that I need, and then we'll commence with the reassembly. And we are back. I have my list here. So what I like to do is, as you already saw, I wrote down all the buckets I have installed, the measurements for them, and then I rewrote the new buckets that I needed. And I went through and I just checked off all the ones that I acquired. So the ones that I had from previous, I marked those through so I can reuse those. And then the remainder of them I just went and got out of my inventory. I probably should get rid of these valve springs, so they're doing nothing for me anymore. So let's get all of these cams uninstalled. We're gonna do the same thing like we did before. We're just gonna see, that one's under compression. I'm gonna rotate it so one's not under compression. There we go. That works. Just gonna zap these off. Whoop. Okay. Once again, caps in order. They must stay in order. Come on. Now I'm going to be removing all of the buckets because, of course, all of them need to be changed. So we're going to place those. Let's see, let me just put myself out a clean towel here so we can work with that. All right. So I will not be using this one anymore. I will be using that. I guess it doesn't matter until I get them all out anyway. I think the camera's in a poor position for this one moment. Let's make it more obvious. That works. And the last one. Yeah, the fly started leaving me alone, but here he is. Because I put up the bug zapper right there, so. The bug zapper. I don't know, if we hear it go buzz, then great. All right, let's organize what we're doing here. So first I'm going to go through the ones that I have here. I need a 262 back here in the corner. That's this guy. Cool. I have a 282 here that needs to go here. And none more of those will get used. And I start on this next column. I have two 322s. Those both need to go here. And I have a 402 here. Is it 402? Yes. The 402 needs to go here. I have a 342 here, and that needs to go there. So the remainder of these are going to be unused. I have to pull from my collection here. So let's figure out what we got here. I have a 342, 342, 42 here, a 542. That's a big one. That's a new one too. 342. Don't do it to me. Don't do it. Damn it. I'll dick with that in a minute. It's got a little bit of something in it. Let me see if I can read that. This is my 462. 462 is here. Go to 322. 22 here. 342 again. 342. So you go here. Let's go with grime in it. This is a 342 again. Both of these are 342s. 342 here, 342 there, and 342 here. How the hell do I have so many 342s? Did I mess up? Uh-oh. Oh, there it is. I was going to say, do I need to audit myself here? Nope. Got it. 262. We go here, and then my last one should also be a 262. Yeah. And that's that spot, 262. Awesome. That one guy to sit down, and then, oh shit, get both of these guys to sit down. Dang it. Play nice. Light bonking. Oh, okay. That's slight bit of force. Okay, so all those buckets will end up going back into stock after we verify. So now I need to put some of this stuff on buckets. Remember, we want to stay lubricated here. cams have already been lubricated. We're not going to re-lubricate those, but we're going to drop them in now. Once again, exhaust cam here. I feel like I'm making a long play video with commentary. We're going to repeat this process of measurement. So once again, 10 turns. All right, should be dead on now, or at least extremely close. We are okay with extremely close. We measure to try and get as close as possible first try. So I'm gonna start with the intake. Let's see if a 9 fits. No, no. We're off to a good start. 8. A tight 8. 8. 8. Doing great here. 8. 8. And I'm not remeasuring because they're coming off as very tight. So that tells me we're in the really good realm. This one may be a 9. It's an extremely tight 9, so we're going to call it an 8. That one's just a 9, plain out. I'm going to leave it though. This is great. Tolerances are looking really good. Okay. So these should be 10s. We're going to measure 11s and see if the 11 fits. If the 11 fits, then we go down. Frick off, fly. So this one's definitely a 10, and that one's an 11. Sounds good to me. Let's move down. Oh, that was a 12. I thought I was measuring with the 10. 10, that's a 10. And 10. That's definitely a 10. That's definitely a 10. When I say definitely a 10, I mean I'm putting the 10 in there and it's a tight fit. So that 10 is it's a little tight on this one. Let's see. Last one's still a little bit loose. Let's try 12. Now that one's an 11. So we're gonna call those good. Okay, this is the portion at which we're going to start in by doing timing stuff. I'm going to go ahead and put on the front cam cap set. I'm going to zip that on real quick and then torque those. Now that I've rotated all those cams over a couple times, I'm going to recheck the torque on all of them. We want to be absolutely sure that everything is torqued to spec. And if we get no movement, great. Not a single one. Cool. That makes me happy. So we're going to loosen this up because we are done using it. Remember, always store your click torque wrenches at the lowest setting. Let's see. I'm going to play cleanup here. And then we need to start in with setting timing, don't we? So, you know, I can do cleanup a little bit later. I'm going to move my clipboard to the side here because I don't need it. So now we need to put the cams at TDC, and we need to put the crank then at TDC. So let me find my tool. Oh man, I'm blind. Okay, this is our cam tool. We have our crank tool. We have our crank pulley tool, and we have our grenade pin. Okay. First, what we're going to do, we're going to rotate these over. We have our cam tool here. So these cams are only located at TDC by this. You cannot torque against this. You will break your cams or the tool. More likely the cams. Then you're going to need new cams, and you have to do this whole process again. So don't do it. So we're going to rotate this over. And right now we're at 180 out, so I'm going to rotate it over. And this should be it. A little bit back, a little bit back. Okay. It will be a tight fit. So now we're going to do the same on this one. Oh, went a little bit past. Back it up. Oh, it's trying to break loose, so we're just going to break these off real quick. Put those aside. For another day. So as again, the flats on this are 24, so we're going to find our 24 and line this up. Right there. Cool. So the cams are now at TDC position. We want to locate our crank to TDC, so we're going to take this little tool. It's the one that has a D on it, not the one that has a Z. All right. There's the little slot on the side. Make sure there's no grime on the hole before you stick this in here. This one's kind of grimy. And really, it should effortlessly go in. If you have trouble with your threads, I think it might be time for me to get a new one. These threads are kind of jacked. Anyway, point is, you're supposed to bottom this out. You don't want to torque it. Normally, I should be able to turn this in by hand, but I can't. I think that last motor I did, the threads were jacked on the from the previous assembly that had it. The previous person who assembled it. So I'm just going to get this in here. Once it stops, it stops. I'm not going to keep on turning it. Okay, that's the stop point. So as you can see, that's it. If you look in here, you'll be able to see that the pin sticks out, and then you'll be able to see where the first counterweight comes down and it touches. That's our indicator that we are for sure at TDC with the crank. So now I'm going to take out my pry tool, and just like I did earlier, I'm going to pry it down into position. Let's see. There we go. And you'll witness the counterweight touching right there. So the crank is now at TDC. I will demonstrate how we verify. So this guy barely will fall in the hole. And this one will fall way down in there. Right? So we do need to install all the timing components, but now is our time to clean up. So I'm going to go ahead and pause here and take care of my cleanup. I'm going to clean up the whole front face, get all this RTV off, and the whole bottom, and get all that RTV off as well. Okay, I've cleaned up the front, I've cleaned up the bottom. So you can see we got a nice clean surface. This is all good to go. What I use is I go through and I do the bulk of the work with one of these carbide scrapers. You just go in and you just scrape off a lot of that. Then I go back with a what we call cookies. You just go get one of your roll-lock pads, stick it on there. Nice and easy. Make sure it's a low aggression one. And you just want to barely take off everything that's there. So, and then I go back with alcohol and a wipe, and I wipe it so we have a very clean surface. Now, I'm going to attempt to install the rear main seal. I don't think the configuration of arms is going to allow me, but I like to put on the rear main seals now. I'll show my technique. So this isn't going to fit obviously as is. So what I like to do is break this off. This gives me a little more space in order to fit it back there. Here we go. Okay, so I'm going to take a little bit of oil. I'm going to find some oil. Do I have some oil? Of course I have oil. I have oil over here. I'm going to take some oil. We're going to rub it around the outside of this. I need more oil than that, dude. That should be enough oil. All right, we got this thing oiled. The idea of that is I want to be able to stick this in here and it not slip around. Or, I mean, I do want it to slip. That's the whole idea. So we want to get this as far down in there as possible. This drops down. Hey, it looks like we're going to be able to do it. And then you just sit that cup over the rear of the crankshaft, and then we're just going to... Done. Now, I don't know if I can get the tool off. Hey, I can. Awesome. What's that? So what I'm going to do now is, some of you guys probably know this, but the rear main seal of these is not visible in the current configuration. So you can cut that piece of felt off. You can just rip it off. It doesn't really do anything. But we can just poke around the edges here and push in that felt, very gently, mind you. And if you run into any hard spots, that indicates that you need to redo the rear main seal, because that would mean that the seal has folded outward. But the entire deal of using that tool is so that that doesn't happen. So I can't really access all of it, but I mean, I've done a million of these, so I'm going to throw in a couple of bolts, just a couple, because I can't access all of them. Not reasonably, at least, so I'm going to at least... Okay, I found my RTV gun. I had to clean the tip out. I made a bit of a mess. I even made a little mess on here. But we inadvertently started putting RTV on here. This is an awesome gun from Home Depot. It's the Husky model, and it has a high leverage option that allows you to pretty much cover the whole thing in one pump. So let's get some of this on here. Something's up with this tube. It's been acting goofy. I was messing with it before I started recording. Yeah, I think there might be RTV stuck inside of it or something. It seems like it's not reacting well. What is your problem, dude? All right, I guess we're gonna do this the harder way, which is short nose. I don't like doing it this way, but if that's how, oh geez. Coming out of the glob. Yeah, we're gonna do this the extra hard. We're gonna do it entirely by hand. I hate this, but it is what it is. Show must go on, as they would say. Cool. I made a giant mess on my hand from my glove ripping. Right. So the only thing to remember here is, oh jeez. Oh jeez. Dude, that thing just moves on its own. The only thing to remember here is we need to clear this. There's a slot right there. So when we go to put it on like this, you can grab from the front, you can grab from the rear. And then all I do is I just make sure I catch that, line up the bolt holes, put it down, give it a wiggle. Cool, let's throw some bolts in here. That's a wrong bolt. Okay, two bolts to go. Oh, it's these two disgusting ones. I'll at least wipe that off. I don't know why it looks like that. Oh, it might be from that oil leak it had. Now I'm going to finger tight them down after I drop my tools and make a lot of noise. That's what this guy's for. Okay. We'll allow those to sit and dry for the next hour or more, depending how long it takes me to do the next portion. I'm gonna grab my pin. So I'm gonna rotate the motor back up. Cool. So we're back right side up. I do need to wipe off the top again because some more oil came up, or rather, when it was upside down, it came down. Make sure we got this clean. I'll wipe off that little bit of RTV that came towards the front, because we're going to end up re-RTVing with the front cover when that goes on. Make sure all this is nice and clean. Cool. We are still at TDC. Now, it is going to be super, super important that these are clean. So I'm going to take a little blast of alcohol. Make sure there is no oil on there. Make sure there's no oil on the crankshaft. Those need to be absolutely spotless. This is the most important part of this whole timing job. Because if there's any oil here, you're going to have slippage, or potential slippage, because it is entirely friction based. A giant mess I made over here. All right, we're going to start in on actually timing the motor now. So we've already set everything at the TDC positions, so that's all good. What we're going to have to do now is play some cleanup. If you are not a very clean person, this part is where you need to either find your cleanliness or find a friend who is clean, because everything from here on out needs to be done very, very cleanly. If any oil gets on any of your hands while you're contacting any of these components and touch the wrong thing, your timing will slip. So this next part is what many people screw up. So please pay very close attention. We're going to arm the tensioner first. It's going to squirt out a little bit of oil. So the way you do that is you're going to compress it like that. We're going to take our pin. With our pin, we're going to press up on the tooth in here. We're going to push this all the way in, put the pin in the back hole, and then release. And now that is armed. That's all we need this for. With our tensioner armed, we can place that to the side. Won't be installing that just yet. That doesn't need to be spick and span, at least. What does need to be spick and span is going to be chain. So this chain, we want to make sure that we clean it at least a little bit, because I don't want it getting any oil anywhere it's not supposed to. That's reasonably clean. Spotless won't really be an option for a chain. These chains are going to try to stay oily. Such is the life of a chain. We want to clean this surface. This is the friction surface. This is the surface the friction will be required on, so we're going to clean that up really, really well. Awesome. Very clean. So now, while I have that, I'm going to go ahead and pull out my bolt. I'm going to set the gear on it. The recessed face is upward in this position. Now, I'm going to have my hand very, very clean for this next spot. I'm going to remove the washer from the package. This part's very tricky because you don't want to touch the face. This is the correct washer. We're going to put this on here and very gently try to press it down. So I'm going to go ahead and install it like this. Again, I don't want to touch the face, so I'm just going to sit it on here. And we're going to bring the bolt down to almost flat, almost snug. All right, so it's still free. We're going to do the same thing with the intake gear. Now this one's going to have a lot of oil in it because it's filled with oil during operation of the engine. So just be sure that you really, really clean it. Spin it over a couple times, make sure you get all that oil out of it. And we're going to do exactly the same thing again again. Get a bolt out. Sit the bolt upright. Set the gear down on it. This one's a little bit trickier, just because it's not as exposed as the other one for you to get the washer on. Get this washer out of here. Once again, these are not keyed. We are strictly just putting them on there. Okay, back it off a little bit, so still free, still free. Remember, I just said it's not keyed. That means these are free until those bolts are tightened down, which does require those friction washers to be new and clean and all that stuff. I'm gonna spray this down real quick. Make sure we get all the oil off of it. This thing needs to be the cleanest. This is the crank gear. So the crank gear is the one that we're gonna put a friction washer behind and in front of. So both surfaces need to be spotless. See, it seems to be a polished surface on this face and that face. Well, I just want to clean everything because if anything gets on these, then we ruin our friction. So your best chance for holding timing is right here. Your best chance for ruining your timing job is here, and your motor. Timing slips, well, you'll have an expensive life. Okay. So I have 2 more washers here. Getting ahead of myself here. Open this guy up. This is our first diamond washer for the crankshaft. Stick that on there. So we've already checked and made sure that our crank nose is clean. Stick that guy down there. Seems like such a trivial part. Find out how trivial it isn't if you don't replace it. I can't say that enough. I mean, there have been plenty of people who have ruined their motors by not doing this the correct way. Okay. There is a slightly extruded face that goes outward. So we're going to put this on here. Cool. Now we have our chain. Chain doesn't have an orientation, but what I will do is I will put the chain on the crank, and then we're going to roll it onto the oil pump. Roll onto the oil pump. Come on. It wants to. It wants to. I know it does. There we go. Okay. That's on there. Now we can put on the tensioner. I'm going to go ahead and load up the pistol to have the 8. A little tricky. So we have the tensioner. And 2 bolts that go with this. So there's a fat bolt. That one goes in the hole. And there's another bolt with a heavy shoulder. We're going to go ahead and install the one with the heavy shoulder last. But that one holds back the, oh no, we installed that one first, sorry. That one holds the position of the spring. So we're going to zip that on there. Okay, the way I install this usually is, stay out of the way. This pushes down here, but first I'm going to grab the spring, put it in there, push this up into position. Awesome. Take this, tension. Now we can take our big chain. I'm not going to wipe this down, it's not really any reason. We're going to put it onto the crank, put it around the cam and the other cam. The only detail here is just make sure it's on this side of the pin. Otherwise you're going to have trouble with assembly. So now, move the chain over to the side. Let's get this in here. Okay. Tighten the top one first. We're going to get our tension arm in here. Okay, it will swing over to the right. Then we push it in, now it's in position. It'll hold itself right on this lip, which is great. Now we're going to switch out for a 10. We put our tensioner in. So just put the tensioner into place. Start that bolt. Start the air bolt. Frag out. You now have your chain tensioned, but nothing is in time yet. Nothing. Because if you try to rotate anything, it's all going to rotate together. So we now need to torque these. So we're going to grab our torque wrench. So the torque spec here is, oh boy, it's either 25, I think it's 25 plus 60 degrees. So we're going to see that or 30. Because of the triviality of the difference, we're going to go with 30. Set. Now, the way we're going to do this is very crucial. As I said earlier, you cannot torque against this. This is the only thing holding the cams in. So we're going to have to hold this right here. We're going to have to counter ourselves. So you're going to take this and you're going to push as much as you're pulling. So the moment you start engaging torque, you need to be pulling against this the same amount for a net 0. That one's torqued. 30.6 it says. And we're going to do this one. $30.1 it says. All right, so this next portion is actually pretty easy. Simple math. How do we do 60 degrees? Well, there are 6 points on these bolts, and there's 60 degrees between them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark the gear here at the point of that one. I'm going to mark the point of this one here. When those line up, it's done. Same here. I'm going to mark the point of this. I'm going to mark the gear there. So once it sweeps, done. Next trick here is you take that socket so you don't have to recheck yourself. We're going to throw our cap way over there and go find it later. Oh well. So it is here. Yeah, so we're going to use that as my marker. I need to grab that cap. Not drying markers out today. This time we're going to use a breaker. We're still going to use this. Nice and secure. Touch more. Touch more. Just a touch more. Beautiful. We're going to do the same one here. Just a little bit more. Awesome. The cams are now timed, but just the cams, because again, the crankshaft is still free. So we're done with cams. So the next portion is we have to put the front cover on. The front cover is what's stopping us from putting the crank into time, and that is because we can't time the crank until the crank pulley goes on. We can't put the crank pulley on until we have the front cover on. We're going to wipe this guy off because I'm paranoid. I want to make sure that guy is clean. All right, let's get one of my clean front covers from over here. Look at that. Nice and clean. All surfaces cleaned off. Looks good. So now I'm gonna stick a front main seal on this guy, RTV it and stick it on. Well, I guess we'll still have to do the hard way with the RTV because, well, you know. Okay. And that is how you install a front main seal. Just needs to be flush. New front main seal, acquired, installed, good to go. So, just gonna RTV all that surface, these two little holes, and then these three. Fun fact, that little spot right there, there's a hole right here, that's one of the oil passages for VVT, because oil travels up, and then it's drilled across, and then it's drilled in, and then it's drilled down from the head to get oil to your VVT. I found this out because I had an incorrect head gasket on one of my earlier motor builds, and the incorrect head gasket didn't have the VVT hole, and I traced that back by sticking something up in there, and I was like, oh great, it doesn't pass through. Now, let's RTV. I'm not going to make a mess on my nice pants here. Come on. This is so much easier if your RTV gun works. And then the rest of you are actually doing this from an RTV tube. That sucks too. So just as a bonus for those of you who are watching this thing all the way through and probably watch my other videos, this motor is actually for the gentleman who had the automatic supercharged 2.5 that I did the crazy amount of crazy amount of coolers on. He came back and he's having me do his other car, which is just a manual car that he's going to be racing. Don't know if I'll video all the assembly of the car, but it's just, I appreciate him for coming back and having us do another on his other car. He was super happy with the supercharged car. Oh, and I guess if you haven't seen those videos, go watch them. I installed a lot of extra stuff on a supercharged 2.5 liter car. I think it's awesome. Sorry about that. Battery got hot and or ran out. I don't know. I just changed battery. So I couldn't stop obviously and go change my battery. I had to do the RTV. So this is all on here now. I'm just putting these bolts down. I got the first couple of bolts in. So once again, we're going to just hand tight these, and we'll come back in a bit and finish that up. Okay, now for the remainder of the bolts. Remember, there is one bolt that's longer than the others. I need to find it real quick. Where are you? There it is. Okay. The longest bolt, the one with the shoulder, goes right here. So we need to get that guy in there. 8mm, tighten it down. Fun fact, on the crank pulley that you removed, there's not enough access to get to this bolt. On the crank pulley from the Miata, there is. So we're actually going to be able to just go ahead and set time while we're waiting on the RTV to dry. I'm going to go ahead and get the rest of these bolts installed though. There's that fly again. I can't believe he's not dead yet. Okay, and then just for now, I'm going to take and put a 10 here. This is where your pulley is going to end up being. We're just going to go ahead and drive this in here just to make sure we get an even seal across the face. I'm going to close up my RTV. Since we're actually completely done with the RTV now. Save my wrist. Just get these down close, and then I'll finish them by hand. I missed one. No, this ratchet's not broken. This is one of the gearless ones that makes no noise. It's kind of creepy. You don't feel anything either. It just stops and goes like a normal ratchet. Right into the oil. Nice. What am I doing? There we go. Okay, I'm gonna fish that out and clean it off, I guess. Disgusting. Didn't need the 10 that badly. The lubricated sockets. Okay, those are all just spare bolts now. We're going to move on to the next part that is very important. I'm going to get another clean towel. This is the part where we set the crank timing. I'm going to clean off the face of this. Make sure it is nice and clean. We're going to clean off this. We're going to clean off the inside just for grins. Okay. Crank pulley will be ready to install. We're going to take this guy out, once again not touching the edges, best as we can. As I try to drop it a million times, I'm going to stick that on here. That is our other washer. We have a bolt here. Let's get the bolt out. There's our bolt. Now, this is once again our OEM crank pulley. It's weird RTV on it. The bolt hole lines up with that hole, so we're just going to slide this on here, wobble, wobble, wobble. I'm going to take a spare M6x1 bolt, stick it in here, make sure those are lined up. Now, if you're not exactly dead center by the end of this, notice there's a little bit of wiggle to that. Doesn't matter, because you're going to end up setting the position of the 5th tooth here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I don't know if you can see that. There we go. The 5th tooth here. We end up lining that up with the crank sensor, so if you got a little bit of difference there, it's fine. Now, this part is crucial, just like when we did the cams. We cannot torque against this little crank holder. We can't torque against the little M6. You will just shear the M6 and you'll bust this off inside the block. Okay. All right. Now the torque for this one is, oh God, it's like 74 or something, right? Let's go find it. $74 required. So we're going to get our deep socket 21 for this. It is extremely important that you do not torque against those pins. I cannot express that enough. So the direction I'm torquing is that way on the bolt, so that means I will be pulling backwards with this. So I'm going to put it in this position here. If you're doing this inside the car, this is way hard. So we just got to torque her down. Acquired. Okay, the next part is very difficult because we need to go an additional 90 degrees. 90 degrees is difficult by yourself, but I'm going to do it. So at this point, I am going to remove all of my timing components because there is a risk that I'll be exerting a lot of force and it can, move, possibly break something. So I'm just going to remove all of these things and should be fine. But now that you've set your 76, the rest is just putting preload on that crank bolt. We're going to knock this out of the back. Remember, everything in the toolbox is a hammer. Just like before, 90 degrees. We all know what 90 degrees looks like. So I'm going to make a mark right at the top of this bolt, and I'm going to make a mark to the right of the pulley. We're going to line those up. This is going to be a little more difficult to do though, because now I have this in the way. Here we go. Let's see how far we got. "45 degrees accomplished." I don't like how far over that is. That sucks. Let's switch over to my shorter one. What I can do, since we were in time, I can rotate the crank. That's a bit of a better position. Yeah, that'll work a lot better. Okay, so another 45 degrees we go. I can't use the angle function on the electric torque wrench because the thing I'm torquing can move. So that means we can't trust the positioning. So once again, I have to get my bigger torque wrench. Last time I did this, I was, let's see, I think I pulled it. It was easier to pull than push. Let's see how far we got. Almost there. Very almost there. Very almost. Make sure, yeah. Torqued. Now, if you want to do it this time, you can verify your timing by rolling it over, sticking your cam holder back in, sticking your crank position tool back in. Pretty confident in my positioning. Only done a lot of these. Now, what I will do is I will rotate the crank over to TDC just to make sure that, so I can put on, oh wait, I don't have a crank sensor yet. Well, I don't have a crank sensor yet, so we're not going to do that. But if you did have your crank sensor at this point, which you probably should, you'll bolt it on here at the TDC position, and you will make sure that the center of the sensor lines up with that one gold tooth. So we're going to stick the plug back in here, get the 10, zip it in. A couple of final details, since I'm not going to go through the remainder of the process, but make sure you cut down the last 3 studs by 1/2 of an inch. Pro tip, make sure you put a nut on, then cut them, so that way when you back the nut off, it'll clear up any thread problems you have. The intake manifold, when you go to put this on here, as well as the injectors, it's nice to clean up all of this stuff, clean up all that stuff here and there. But when you go to put on the intake runners, you're going to want to RTV the surface because these ports are much larger than the other ones off of the 2.0, so the gasket really won't work. That's pretty much it. So, thanks for watching my extremely long video on how to do this from the fixed perspective. If you have any questions, feel free to shoot me an email. If you want a copy of my, my cam calculator, just email me. I'll be happy to send it over to you. Check us out. See you later.